So this morning I made a tweet and I asked you guys on Twitter, I said, hey, what's one thing you hear Destiny players say often? What's an opinion you hear people say often in the Destiny community that you think makes zero sense? That you're just like, that is the most ridiculous thing. And you guys showed up on that tweet. I mean, hundreds of responses, some great reads, some great threads in there. So I appreciate those of you who interacted with that tweet. But I wanted to highlight some of these things that Destiny players say that make no sense. And there's a long list of them, so I had to whittle it down. And I am absolutely not touching any of the comments that had anything to do with skill-based matchmaking, because I was like, I've talked so much about that, and it never goes well. People get so upset one way or the other, so I'm just going to leave that one alone. We're going to stick to other ones. And I'll probably play, I've got a mixed bag of just tons of gameplay that I've been storing up over the last several months. I don't have a lot of recent gameplay because recently I have not been playing. For example, I logged in this morning, played a few matches, and that's the first time I've played the game in 5 days, which for me, a Destiny content creator, that's a long time for me to not be playing the game. And before that, I had like a 4-day hiatus before my previous grouping of play sessions. So my gameplay's kind of been whittled down quite a bit. You know, I always hear people saying, if you don't like it, don't play. It's like, what do you think I'm doing? I'm playing the bare minimum right now just to get by. But that's neither here nor there. Let's dive right into some of these, starting with the comment, the opinion that Destiny is a dead game. This is an absolutely stupid and ridiculous claim. Just because somebody is not playing the game, they like to throw around this comment like, I haven't played this game in months, it's dead. Were you the only person keeping Destiny afloat? Are you the only reason that this game was ever successful is because you personally played the game? I hate to break it to you, but you are not that important to Bungie. You are not that important to this game, and you're never going to be that important to any other game either. It is one of the most nearsighted comments a person can make. Now, you could say that the game is in decline or that it's losing players, but to say that it's a dead game is to basically bury your head in the sand, put your fingers in your ears, and say, la, 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 because there is so much information out there. It's an open API. You can track all kinds of things like population numbers, and Destiny is always booming, right? Even in the bad seasons, it is a successful game with a ton, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people playing it, lots of money coming in, lots of revenue flow. It's just a really dumb thing to say if you say that the game is dead. It basically says that you do not have the capacity to look at raw data and make an obvious informed decision. Number 2, this one is a big one for me because I hear this all the time. People say this opinion. They say that Bungie only caters to streamers. They only listen to the content creators. This is one of the absolute dumbest opinions I ever see, because what are the content creators and streamers saying? What have they been saying for years now? They've been saying things like, hey, we don't like skill-based matchmaking. I said I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not. But I'm just going to bring this up as a side point. They say we don't like SBMM. What does Bungie do? They bring SBMM in. And then when we say, hey, listen, it's got all these issues, they double down, triple down, quadruple down on that system and continue to modify it. Streamers say, listen, the inaccuracy penalties, we don't like them. And we don't like this AE system. And Bungie doubles down, triples down, quadruples down on it. Streamers say we need more maps. What does Bungie do? Absolutely friggin' nothing for years. Like almost a 3-year period where not a single new map was brought into the game. Streamers said don't nerf stompies. They nerfed stompies. Streamers said please don't nerf hand cannons and shotguns. What do? They nerfed hand cannons and shotguns eons ago. All this to say, there are so many issues right now that we have been complaining about. And this is one thing we hear all the time. It's like, all you content creators ever do is complain. It's like, yeah, we're trying to get feedback on the game, and it gets completely ignored. Well, that's because Bungie does not listen to or cater to streamers, and they haven't for a long time. There have been seasons where they've invited streamers along with a ton of other kinds of people and gamers to come to the studio and give feedback that they took to heart. But in terms of just catering to streamers, this is not a thing, and it really never has been. The next thing on the list of things that Destiny players say that makes no sense, sunsetting was bad for the game. I think that there is a little nuance to this one. This was one that was brought up in my thread this morning several times. But I think there's a little nuance to this. Obviously, sunsetting things like maps and full campaigns that, you know, provided a really important context to Destiny. I think that those were bad. But in terms of sunsetting gear, this game it's been a thing since 2017. And a lot of the guns And even exotic armor pieces were a thing way back in Destiny 1 as well, going back to 2014. Like, at some point, in order for the game to continue progressing, some stuff has to go away. I mean, it's sort of the inevitable reality of a game like Destiny. If you understand how Destiny works, you sort of have to come to terms with the fact that sunsetting has to happen when it comes to gear. Like, some gear just has to die eventually to make room for new stuff. I kind of think of it like almost like an over-encumbered system in a lot of like RPGs that you might play. Eventually your backpack's full and you gotta drop stuff. You gotta leave some stuff behind. You're in a cave, you're looting it, and then you get the whole, that message pops up that you're over-encumbered, you can't run anymore. You've got too much stuff, and then you have to like unzip your pack and you're scrounging through it and you're trying to figure out, oh, what can I get rid of? Do I really need this? I guess maybe I don't. You toss something out that's heavy so that you can keep moving forward. That's kind of what sunsetting is like. We're getting over encumbered. It's bogging the game down. It's impeding progress. And so we have to unzip the pack every now and then, take a good hard look at the stuff that's in there and say, we might have to start parting ways with this and this and this. And sunsetting happens in a number of ways. One, the light level doesn't come forward, or they just nerf something into the ground. Like the Recluse. Can you imagine if the Recluse was never nerfed and its light level left behind? It would still be like the premier go-to primary weapon in PvE activities. Yeah, and in PvP too. It would be nuts in PvP. Some things are allowed to be really cool and really powerful for a short amount of time, and then they lose that privilege over time so that we can move forward onto new things. The fourth thing that we hear people say, Destiny gamers say, that makes no sense. Destiny 1 was a better game than Destiny 2. Now, I will agree that there are certain individual aspects of Destiny 1 that may have been more successful than their counterparts in D2. But generally speaking, to say D1 was a better game than D2 is a broad sweeping generalization that is more or less baseless. D2 has come a long way from where we were in D1, and there are a lot of simple quality of life adjustments that have been made that have snowballed over time to make D2 a much more comprehensive, easy to understand, intuitive game to play than D1 ever was. Like being able to focus drops, crafting weapons, the sheer amount of content we have in D2 as compared to D1, the fluidity of combat, frame rates, the overall economy in the game. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, ways that D2 has greatly expanded on the foundation that D1 started, the foundation that D1 laid. And I love Destiny 1. I remember it very fondly and very nostalgically, but I don't have rose-tinted glasses. I can say definitively that Destiny 2 overall is a better game than Destiny 1 ever was. Number 5, this one was listed many times in that thread this morning. People said, criticizing controller usage, right? This is an opinion that comes up all the time in the Destiny community where people are like, well, that's not just exclusive to Destiny, I guess, but it's a comment that's made a lot. It's an opinion that's commonly shared. The controller users are somehow inferior. The controller is easy, list any number of reasons why controller is inferior to mouse and keyboard. At the end of the day, this is just a dumb comment to make. As someone who plays both mouse and keyboard and controller basically every day I pick up a controller and every day I use mouse and keyboard. And I talk about this a number of times in videos and streams past, but Destiny 2 it's the only game I play on console. Every other video game I play on PC because my wife doesn't play console and she and I game together almost every night. My two best friends from college, we game together probably 5 nights a week. We all game together and they absolutely do not play on consoles. We play on PC. And so I walk on both sides of that line and I understand the advantages that each input method has. But at the end of the day, if I'm playing on a console and you're criticizing me for using a controller or anyone else for using a controller on console, that is the common input that we all share on console. We're all at an even playing field. It is mind-bogglingly stupid to criticize someone on console for using a controller. Like, what are they gonna do? Do you want them to plug in a Zim and use a mouse and keyboard and cheat? Is that what you want them to do? It doesn't make any sense. And what do you care? If Jim Bob over here has been playing console all his life, he finally gets a PC, and Jim Bob has a full-time job and a family or whatever it may be, he's got hobbies, he's out there touching grass, he doesn't want to sit over here and try to relearn the basics of how to play a video game in terms of his input method, when he could just plug in a controller intuitively and know exactly what to do and how to play his game. If you are wasting brain cells caring about how Jim Bob plays his games in terms of his input device on a PC, then you need to get a hobby, my dude. That's some of the weakest energy that anyone could ever expend, is to bother caring what input device on PC, whether it's a controller or an M&K, someone is using. So I totally agree with that one that people listed this morning. Next, the opinion that 30th anniversary PvP was the best PvP we've had in D2. I hear this one a lot, and I hear varying degrees of this. Some people say it's the best in recent years that we've had, and that I think you can make a really good case for. But to say that it's the best D2's ever been, I don't think I would agree with that. I mean, every season has had its challenges. There's no perfect PvP meta, but I think we have been in metas before that were much more exciting than 30th anniversary, when it was Lord of Wolves and Omni Oculus. I think that was extremely obnoxious. It was so obnoxious to play against. And I think we had a lot of good things going for us during the 30th anniversary update. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think that I hold it as the staple for what D2 PvP should be. I think it's up there with a number of other seasons that were a lot of fun. I think Forsaken, before we really fell into that hard set meta of Luna's Howl, Dustrock Blues, I mean, even that wasn't terrible. It was kind of annoying. But before we settled into that whole like new age of discovery with Forsaken was so much fun. It was an absolute riot to play during that time. I think when Menagerie launched, that season was a lot of fun too. The season that Garden of Salvation launched, I thought was a lot of fun in PvP for a long time before things really settled. It's like anytime you have a big shakeup and you have those several weeks before the meta settles, those few weeks are always super dynamic, super exciting. I just wish they were more frequent. But all this to say, 30th anniversary, I think, was great, but I'm not sure that I would hold it as the staple for like the perfect or ideal D2 PvP. But that was an interesting one to think about this morning for sure. Number 7, Bungie doesn't play their own game. Oh man, how many times have I read that comment? Bungie doesn't even play their own game. What do you, what? They literally have people who are paid to play the game. There are people who are paid at Bungie to just sit there and play the game. Before, new features launch, they're playing them. Before new campaigns launch, they're playing them. Before there's literally an investments team whose job it is to play the game and give feedback on how they feel their time invested playing that game is being rewarded. To say they don't play their game is absolutely stupid. What kind of a AAA studio wouldn't play their own game in office? Now, I think that you could criticize the way that they take criticism and data from their teams, their playtesters and their investment teams. I think you can criticize that, like, hey, they need to listen to their playtesters more because they're probably being told the same things we are saying when we play the final product. But the front office, for some reason, is not really acting on the feedback, or at least not in a timely manner. I think you could criticize that plenty. But a certain playtester who will remain nameless once told me, he's like, don't blame me, man. he's like, don't blame me. I said the same things you're saying before the final product shipped. Another thing that came up very frequently this morning was the opinion that anytime Bungie does one thing, it means that they sacrificed dev time on, say, PvP, for example. So like last week, when all this news broke about them going after this guy that was harassing the former community manager and going after him legally in court, they're like, well, they wasted all that time pursuing this, a lawsuit against this guy, this civil suit against this guy, whatever. And that they could have been spending that time making us PvP maps. I was like, what, are you kidding me? Did you actually think that Bungie's legal team is capable of developing maps? And that them going after this guy was sacrificing the time that these lawyers were going to spend building maps for us? That is an incredibly stupid thing to say and think. And it happens with so many different aspects of game dev where people will criticize, but the narrative team was doing X, Y, and Z, and that's why we didn't get a new, strike. We didn't get a new PvP map because the narrative team was. It's like there's no crossover there. The narrative team does not have the capacity to build you a strike. They don't have the capacity or the tools or the expertise to build you a PvP map. That's just not how it works. You can criticize the front office at Bungie for the way that they, allocate their funds and what projects they're funding, for sure. So there's no overlap between those teams, so don't get those wires crossed. The last thing I want to bring up is one that generated a lot of discussion this morning because it was the example that I shared when I made the prompt. But I said, and a lot of other people chimed in, I'll never understand this obsession with saying that Yotün is overpowered and should be a heavy weapon. Like, Yotün is one of the easiest games in the history of Destiny 2 to counter. Like, you get hit with it one time, and then you're like, oh, I know it's on the field. I know that it has an extremely long charge time. I know that it has travel time. It's not hit scan. So you can play around it extremely easily. If you just stand in the open and let that fireball come and hit you, you were not paying attention. Like, that is all. I'm a firm believer that 9 out of 10 times that you die to Yotün, it's your fault. It's not that the other guy made some nasty play. Like, it was your fault. And a lot of people will like clip the one time that the tracking like curves really hard and hits them. And it's like, that happens so infrequently. And a lot of times it's just tick rate stuff. And either way, you would have died faster if the guy had a cloud strike and just shot you in the head instead of pre-charging something, launching it across the map, and having it fly through the air and turn and hit you. I mean, he could have just shot you twice with a messenger while you were in the open instead. You know what I mean? I think Yotün is its power is grossly over-exaggerated, and I think that it's honestly not that great of a gun. I think that it has moments. It can be fun to play with. It's definitely exotic. Overpowered? Far from it. But anyways, there you go. Those are some of the opinions that Destiny players frequently share that I think are just ridiculous. They're just silly to me. I don't want to be too harsh if you fall into one of these categories. So be sure to leave a comment below. What would you add to the list, or what would you defend on the list? Let me know. Thanks so much for tuning into the video today. I appreciate you. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible. Bye-bye.